We got a guest tonight, so let's do it the right way and not talk
Best
over
behavior.
credits.
Yeah.
Don't embarrass yourself or any of us in front of the guest by talking over the opening credits. One, it's annoying. Two, it ruins the credits. And three, it's embarrassing.
Fair enough.
Okay,
I mean, that's
Jake, what did I just... I literally just said, do not talk over the opening credits.
Is that... Yeah, I think that... Yeah, that's what you said. I'm with you.
What are you doing?
I'm in full agreement. Don't talk over the credits under no scenario.
So annoying. No one ever respects my request to not talk over
I've agreed
the
with
damn
your
opening
request.
credits. It's left past 10. And it really is like 5 left past 10. At least. And we have a guest. What's up, Antonio? Good to see you.
Hey, buddy.
Nice to see you guys. Good to see everyone here.
Yeah. So, what's going on out there? Jesus Christ.
Boy, what's not
look,
going on out there?
I want to cry.
Shit.
Like, I know, I keep saying we've been through this, we've seen this, we know what to expect. And then it's like, no, this is the worst I've ever imagined. It's so bad. Everything sucks. Is the Weather Channel behind a paywall yet?
Right.
No. Oh,
They're talking
Andrea,
about doing
by
that
the way,
way.
Andrea
We'll find out
cannot
on
be
Twitter.
with us tonight, everyone. I'm sorry we didn't announce it.
Yeah, a third of the people just logged off.
Oh.
The Andrea stands just
Yeah.
bailed.
Well, this is going to be a bit of a surprise to you guys, but I've gotten real into pottery.
Oh. Oh.
Really?
Good for
Ooh.
you.
Well, good.
Got-
You can
got-
make me something.
Yeah. Well, if you need a cup, an unevenly shaped and unevenly thick cup. Yeah.
We call that in the art world, we call that by hand. And,
Ah,
and
That's
so
right.
people are like, oh, wow,
Right.
artisanal.
This is, it's an artisanal. It might be a sieve. It depends, really. It's luck of the draw.
Nice.
In the restaurant business, we called it rustic, just which was like a fancy word for sloppy.
Yes. Well, it gave me an
No
idea.
presentation.
So, Tony, would you introduce yourself for everybody that may not know you on the other channels?
But yeah, and so he's been on before, but
I
welcome
know,
back.
but it's been a
Seriously,
while.
it's been way too long.
You were like
Please
our.
introduce
Was
yourself.
he our first guest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you can find me mostly, well, first and foremost, my name is Antonio Reid, as indicated in the corner there. But you can find me mostly on Environmental Coffeehouse, where I jump in with Sandy and we try to get the lowdown on what's happening around the planet. Sometimes that can be tough and challenging, but it is what it is. So I help try to communicate the politics, the history, and the geopolitics that kind of led up to the moment they're all living in. And that's kind of my angle and perspective on the Environmental Coffeehouse.
Yeah, and you're our historian, and really, I do depend on you for the analysis of every COP, Council of the Parties, and the IPCC data and information, and where we are. And COP, for all of you that don't know, is the annual climate conference every year. Council of the Parties put on this year. It was Azerbaijan. I was not happy at all. But Antonio's well, because it's a terrible, horrible country that committed genocide. And but Council of the Parties, Antonio, maybe you could tell everybody, a little bit more about what it is.
Yeah. So the COP is the initiative that originally got started in the early 1990s. It's an organization put together by the United Nations, and then they put together a political organization, a more scientific body, which delivered us the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And that one you might be a little bit more familiar with. You'll hear about some of their headline reports come out every now and again, such as the landmark report in 2007 that won the Nobel Prize, their fourth assessment. And then again, they got a lot of title and headway with their fifth report. That was a very daunting and serious report on climate change. People had to take a big step back, and we had a lot of gasp that year. Then they followed up in 2018 with the 1.5 degree special report, and that was very sobering. And so this is what the group does: is it compels information about different ecosystems and different parts of the biosphere and the climate system around the planet from different scientific institutions, whether they be American or Japanese, Canadian, what have you. And they will compile this data into a consensus report, and then they will deliver this consensus report to the Conference of Parties, which is, again, the political organ that would essentially vote on policy to respond to the science, ideally.
And you interviewed, all of a sudden, who was your mentor? Stuart Scott. Oh, he was a wonderful person. He used to go to the COP every year, and he really influenced you, but he's passed away. So R.I.P. Stuart. He'd be turning over in his grave knowing what's going on now.
Well, he certainly did have a lot of insight. As you say, Stuart Scott was there at the Conference of Parties, and he would interview people like Dr. James Hansen, the former director of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies.
Yep.
People like Jeffrey Sachs, who's a top economist, Columbia, Peter Wadhams at Oxford University, and many others. So he was acutely aware of what we're dealing with. So yeah, he would be.
We miss him.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So tell us, where are we? Climatologically, in like 3 words or 4 words.
Well, I would say it like this: where we are amidst the Trump administration's second week in office is about how I would describe the climate crisis.
F you. Yeah, baby. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
And remember, guys, in the chat, if you have questions for Antonio about any of this stuff, put a Q and put the question, and Matt will put it up, because, you want to learn tonight too. We aim to please.
Yeah, and if you don't want to answer questions, just go, nah, I'm not answering that. And that'll be right in line with the show anyway. So that's our platform. We do what we want. Right. But look, seriously, I do think it has to be pretty difficult to be walking around with all this knowledge of what we should be doing. Because I can guess what we should be doing. I can assume what we should be doing. But when it comes out of my head, it's like, we probably need more regulation. You know what I mean? But scientifically what's not being done. And then you're watching this stuff that was kind of helpful being undone. And that has got to be like news anxiety redefined for someone like yourself. Is that true? Is it harder for you to deal with because of your knowledge level?
I think obviously with more knowledge, you become more aware. So to the extent that you're more aware, the more jarring, the more shocking it can be sometimes to deal with an administration that just is completely not interested in any sense of the word in dealing with the realities happening around the globe. And as you say, it's not as if we were really winning before. But to take a sledgehammer or a jackhammer or what have you to our national institutions, to whatever climate policies that we did have on the ground running, it's frightening, especially given the latest global average temperature assessment that just came out, that we have rocketed past the international guardrail of 1.5 degrees Celsius above the baseline, hitting 1.6, and this is just after a year, 2023, of hitting 1.5. So to see that happen and then to see Trump come in office and immediately pull out of the Paris Accords again, it is difficult sometimes to describe how one ought to feel or react or respond. Sure,
but it's not just like Trump; it's Musk,
right?
And the stuff that was done was so laughably insufficient. And then to see that, like, I had all these, I thought I was being practical, and I had all these hopes, like, oh man, I hope they don't fail to increase the protections. But no. It's even that insufficient measure that was taken gets ripped down, and I'm just like, you know what? We deserve what's coming. The one pleasure I can take.
Oh my God, you sound like a doomer. The hell?
What?
I'm positive you don't know what that word means, but yeah, we do deserve. We absolutely earned the stuff. I wonder if we have even a chance to survive.
The doomer sphere, honey.
I will say the rest of the world, because I do think that we get locked away here in the American sphere. Mm-hmm. The rest of the world is kind of in shock.
Yeah. No, Sandy, I'm sorry. I gotta correct. I just ran back my own words in my head. I'm positive I don't know. I don't know what that word means. Not you.
The doomosphere? The doomosphere. Doomer?
Being a doomer, and I know you'll explain it to me, but I still won't understand it. I'm sorry.
Explain it to us real quick. What's it mean?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Why not?
I mean, I know.
The doomer view. It might be that, we feel fine about today, tomorrow, whatever. But the big picture is we're not going to do well as humanity. We're not going to pull ourselves out of this. We don't prognosticate. We don't say when it's going to happen. We are slowly sliding into the polycrisis of we are in trouble. And so when you say doomer, but I mean, I'm a person that I love to talk to all kinds of people, but doomer, the bigger picture is basically we just can't see how this is going to be fixed. But that doesn't mean we don't grow food. We won't want permaculture. We don't want the tree growing. We don't want nonviolent civil disobedience. We want it all. But the big picture is don't look at the big picture. Put it that way. And local activism is where it's at.
18th time's a charm. Then I guess I do understand what it means. And you're right. I am a doomer.
I go with, I don't remember the exact quote, but I go with George Carlin where he's like, the planet's going to be fine.
Right.
And I'm totally cool with that. It's like somebody said something like there's a comet on track to hit the earth in like 80 years. And I was like, fucking speed it up. Let's go. What? This is bullshit, man. What fucking rock.
All of you. Holy shit. You sound like my whole crew.
Look, I wish it was avoidable, but if it's not, I want the bad guys, whatever we got to do to get the bad guys to go down to, but with our luck, they'll survive.
What's shocking about me, I used to be, and this is definitely embarrassing now, but I'll have to do it. I used to be an Elon Musk fanboy. He was in. Do what?
No, it was understandable back in the day.
Yeah.
At one point, he was in Iron Man 2.
Oh, yeah.
At the race in Rio de Janeiro when they're doing the little hot car race or whatever. And, he comes in this idea with an electric jet to Tony Stark. And it's just, there's this fanboy fiction around him. And then he got involved in politics and things just started.
That ruined it. And after that,
first he got divorced.
He was married to that that goth chick. That after they got divorced, that's it. He really lost it.
So every super villain story starts with a divorce. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I told There
My
was a
case
friend of
twice.
mine. A friend of mine last May asked
Yeah.
me. He was at my house, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. He's a guy I grew up with, and he said, "So you're streaming now, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I watch a couple. You talk very negatively about Elon Musk. What's the deal? Why don't you like him? Why don't people like him?" And I was like, I said, "What's to like?" And he goes, "I don't know." And I was like, "Okay, so it's not that I don't like him. It's that you don't realize he's fucking bad for business. Like this guy is not cool and he's not doing anyone any favors. That's why we're railing against him." He goes, "Well, maybe I'll keep my ears open." So I hit him up like 2 days ago in a text and I was like, "Hey, do you remember asking me why I was so negative about Elon Musk?" And he goes, "I've been thinking about that a lot lately." Because he's like, "Holy shit, this motherfucker." He's like, "We all should have seen it." And it's just, this is why I don't think it's a negative thing to refer to some people as normies. That's actually it. I would love to be blissfully unaware of why this guy is such a prick and so bad for everything. But like we have to identify that there are people out there who are not as switched on as we are to this stuff, do not have their finger on the pulse.
There's tons of them. I spoke to one tonight, a girlfriend of mine in Boca from high school, right? A few weeks ago when Nazi Musk did the Sig Heil, she was in denial. "Oh, that's not it. Oh, it's not it." And she's Jewish, and she goes, "Oh, the ADL says it's not it," which they have changed because Jonathan Greenblatt should really quit the ADL. He sucks. But and then I talked to her tonight, and I said, "So, how do you feel a few weeks later?" And she's trying to like circumvent everything. And I said, "Well," she goes, "Well, it's only been a few weeks. We have to give it time." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I can't get through it."
God, yes.
But this is the most, yes, but she's
I didn't realize it was 2016.
I know.
That makes me so mad.
It makes me very mad. Give it time. I said,
just go, "You're not allowed to vote anymore."
Yeah, but they vote. They're straight Israel voters. Like everything was Israel, and everything was, Israel is. And the thing
some
is,
people can't be reached.
Just like the Second Amendment voters, the one issue voters. But I can't. I was trying to get through to her. She's a lovely person, but my God, I'm like, come on. So we'll see if she, every 3 weeks now, I'm checking in with her to see if she realizes.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, but it's hard.
It's people. I used to work with people
Mm-hmm.
in, this was like 2020, 2021, who would say, "Isn't it cool that we have a publicly funded space program?" And I was like, "Yeah, I get it's not, it's they're not gonna privatize the profits or they're not going to socialize the profits like they would socialize the costs. You know what I mean? They privatize the profits. It just, I was like, it would be nice if it served us at all, but it's just somebody's little fun side project. It's bullshit. But
NASA in general does serve us.
Yes. Okay, but NASA, yeah. But do you remember, this is a little off topic, but because it's been in the news so much, I was reading about, like, who was it that took William Shatner? That was Bezos, took Captain Kirk into space. And then that, like, celebrities have been in space before. Did you know AC/DC went to fucking outer space?
No, that's an odd one. I did not know that.
I'm waiting to hear that.
Do you know how they got there?
How did they get there?
Rocket.
Oh.
Is that dumb?
Yes. It's okay. I laugh at all of them.
Oh, it got me.
Sandy misses most of them. Let's be honest. Sandy misses. I tell a dad joke and Sandy just keeps going. I'm like, she either really hated that or it was right up her.
No, it's because I pay attention to the chat and then I didn't hear your dad joke.
I said last week, I had a joke about prostitutes, but it was horrible. And you did not get it.
Horrible.
Oh, it just took me to
look at Jake.
Okay.
Horrible. Yeah, I know.
Antonio, you understand.
No, I was a blonde for most of my life.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, here's one. We got one. It's a super chat too from Wanda. Wanda, thanks for $1.99 super chat. What can state/local governments do, if anything? Yeah.
All
So if we
right,
can't rely on the
great.
federal government, Congress is busy going, guys, fundraise, give us money. And what can we do?
In you mean in climate and that
Yeah,
kind of
like
thing? Go ahead,
locally,
Tony.
what, or I mean, okay, let's start there. But for my own curiosity, like, what do you guys think can be done at all at the local level? Like, I've been reporting a lot on school boards and
Okay.
districts opposing ICE coming into what we
Right.
call sensitive locations, bus stops, hospitals, schools, without warrants, and maybe not even then. What can local governments
Oops.
do to counteract this stuff when it comes to the
Oops.
environment?
Well, I got one for you. Go to your city council and request that all government buildings have solar panels installed. It's a great way to start. You reduce the energy use, rather the non-renewable energy use of a whole city with one vote. Yeah, that's a great way to start.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, what you want to do, what local governments, municipalities, what states can do is first mandate a sort of standard for all public buildings. Make sure that there's energy efficiency standards and weatherization standards. But also, states are moving on this. One of the ways that states are moving on this, whether they want to or not, unfortunately, we're seeing this in California after the horrific Palisades fires across LA County. Well, people are going to have to respond because now this is interrupting normal state function and operation. So in the state of California, the state now has to step up and has to be the insurer of last resort in many cases. And we see the same thing happening, for example, in the state of Florida. So there are responses that states are having. But in terms of what the local governments can do, for example, as a very local level, when I went to Appalachian State University, we were pushing to make sure that our institution was carbon neutral by a certain year. So cities and municipalities can certainly set those sort of carbon neutral goals for themselves. And in fact, we've seen just that, particularly after the Trump administration round one, when he pulled out of the Paris Accords the first time. We saw many municipalities across the United States launch their own separate initiatives in response to climate change. And that's what states are going to continue to do and have done. But without federal backing, oftentimes we see large-scale projects not have the financing to really take off the ground.
And there's the constant threat of pushback and retaliation from, I mean, they at least threaten it. Trump says, if you go against us or show any resistance, we'll come after you. They talk about pressing charges, stuff like that, withholding funding, just about everything you can think of. So it's good to see some people aren't, backing down from those threats.
Well, the Trump administration, I mean, we're all watching what's happening. I guess many of us are watching what's happening right now across the country with the deportations, this mass deportation effort. It is interesting, okay? I want people to understand this. So let's think about Obama, Trump, Biden, and now Trump. It is true to say that the Obama administration, on average, that is daily, had deported nearly 1,000 people.
Right.
Okay.
Fair.
The Trump administration immediately following, which is very interesting, only did about 668 people daily.
Right.
Now, I contribute that to just incompetence, just because this is your thing. You want to do this. I mean, presumably Obama is just maintaining the system's flow and doing it efficiently.
Trump's being more performative. Wants a wall. It's all rhetoric. It's all red meat for his base, that kind of stuff. Didn't do, Obama
Well, the
put
one
those
thing I will
camps there
say
on the border, right?
is cautioning this time. I do think this is a much more serious and organized effort. I think that's one thing that the Trump squad, however you would describe the people that he encircles himself
Cronies,
with,
Nazis,
Nazis, what have you. But all of these sorts of folks, Project 2025 is now in full swing, and that's what we're talking about here. And so they are ready with a shotgun of executive orders, for which we've seen now over 200 executive orders. Okay, they are ready for the onslaught of lawsuits, of course, that are going to happen in reaction, and that's part of the game plan here, is to get tied up in the courts, and as they get tied up in the courts, continue to move at lightning speed wherever and whenever. I mean, look at what's happening, bringing up Elon Musk, and then with DOGE, and Elon Musk is now semi-private governmental self-appointed.
It's insane. Like, that has to be one of the craziest things to ever happen. What was that? Like, there's some 19-year-old kid whose username is Big Balls putting in servers at the Treasury or something like that. Like, what the fuck is going on? And
they love it. The people that voted for this love it.
Well, and look, I mean, there's a lot of liberals who read the New York Times, and there was a morning story from this guy German Lopez, who's one of the worst, because he comes across as he is normalizing this stuff. This piece said it's funny because DOGE and Trump are going after what amounts to 4% of spending, but when they should probably be going after the more expensive stuff like military and Social Security. And I'm like, you cannot lump military and Social Security into the same sentence. Insane. One is an investment and one is waste. And the Pentagon fails every audit. They don't know where the money goes, and Congress doubles the requests they make for budget every year. That's not, and now let's talk about Social Security in terms of why you should invest in it or help only make it better, enhance it, right? It's oh my God, it's so infuriating. But it's like, here's this nice sweet article about how Trump has a vision for overhauling the government, and I'm like, these guys are all demolition, no carpenters.
Right. This is
well put.
This is a looting operation.
Yes.
I don't like to be so colorful in my description of politics, but I just want to
go for it.
Well, I mean, I just want to be clear. I mean, this is a looting operation. That's why they're at the Treasury, by the way.
They were all the places that were going to investigate him or critical of him and his businesses. Yeah.
And it's really, we're stuck because, whatever legal action could be or would be taken in a situation like this, the president's already given his go ahead, and so they're definitely going to get pardoned in a situation like this. And it really does, I think, challenge the dynamicism and the vitality of the American governmental system. I don't really think that we faced in our modern era what I would describe, this really is a threat to the continuity of governance. This is well outside of any governmental branch, right? We can't really describe Elon Musk as being part of the executive, even if he has a good relationship with the president. He's certainly not part of the legislative branch. No one has elected Mr. Musk, and he's not part of the judiciary. Right. Yet he is taking on what seems to look like an instrumentality role for the federal government. So that is very bizarre, I would at least say, in terms of a president. We haven't really seen anything like this.
And it's so telling that it's difficult to explain. You just try to explain it in terms of American terms. Very difficult to explain what Elon Musk is. Explaining it in another country's terms, very easy. He's an oligarch. He's taken on the role of an oligarch.
He is in the business of destabilizing the American government while also propping up and funding the far right in Germany, who don't call themselves Nazis only because it's illegal to do that.
Yeah.
They would undo that as soon as they get elected. And then he's in Brazil, he's in Britain, he's everywhere.
You're telling me Elon Musk is associating with
people
that are basically Nazis that aren't allowed
to
call
it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe. I know.
But listen, he's also with Peter Thiel and all the tech bros that have put all their money into writing this. They're working with the Heritage Foundation. They're working with the evangelicals and the tech bros. They're all in it together for Project 2025.
Yeah, and they want the as much money as they can get, and they don't want anyone to tell them what to do. I believe that the more money you have, the more incoherent you become, right? I just think like you become very abnormal with the more money you have, and these people have more money than anybody. So if there's any truth to what I just speculated, then these would be some of the craziest people out there, right? Like if you get drunk on that stuff, then they are really high. And they should not be having their hands where they're having them. But I think it's a national security threat. All I keep hearing is the new border czar is saying the more immigrants we take off the streets, the more we increase public safety and reduce national security threats. There is an immigrant who is a major national security threat and a danger to the public right now. His name is Elon Musk.
Yeah.
He's doing everything he can to destabilize the country while propping up the far right in other countries in the hopes that they will win their upcoming elections. Like how that is, you want to talk about news anxiety? Like we have to pay attention. We have to watch this stuff. But like I have a whole show planned tomorrow morning with Brittany Page to talk about how people can watch the news and manage their anxiety and she has a background in a day job in the healthcare industry, but we have to pay attention to this. But like, how do you do it in a way that doesn't make you go completely batshit crazy? Because it will. It's just too much.
Well, wait a minute. A lot of us already are. So
no, but you're not.
No, I know.
You're not, though. You're just on the front lines. And I think there's some wear and tear on some of us, but we're also... we can be galvanized by this. We can be tougher. We can find ways to power through and record this shit and make people aware, increase awareness.
How do you deal with this, Tony?
Yeah.
It is hard to deal with this, right? Because there's so many things to think about. There's the climate crisis. There's what's happening in immigration, as we've been talking about. There's these daily shocks. I think it is important for people to divide their attention, right? You have to find a way to disconnect. You have to, because disconnecting allows you to recharge so that you have the energy to tackle these things later on with the necessary strength that you'll definitely need. For me, Sandy, I just got back recently from hiking the Grand Canyon. I mean, that was obviously a big getaway. I know that not everyone can do things like that, but only, even in my daily life, disconnecting, I'm writing a book, and that I get kind of lost in that world for the time being.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
A lot of research.
A lot of research, which I love to do. So
there is something lovely about just getting lost in a world of information.
Yeah, and for me as a historian, right now I'm studying the 1st century. So I'm kind of very enveloped in that world, and that's kind of where I am. So, but yeah, it's hard because I want to stay lost in 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So does the GOP.
Oh yeah. 2,000 years ago, weren't they just wearing like togas and sandals? Am I wrong? Because that would be great. That's practically me yesterday with 81 degrees outside.
That's a really great historian comment. I just want to stay lost in 2,000 years ago.
Well, let's divert then, even though we were talking about overall something more important. Where 1,000 years ago? What's your area of expertise?
So
or rather, what are you looking at?
So right now I'm studying ancient Israel. So this is the 1st century, particularly the late Second Temple period, the rise of early Christianity, the historical Jesus, and the New Testament. And of course, that study, because you have to get really in depth on some of these things, takes you around the ancient Mediterranean, which a lot of people don't understand. Between North Africa and Southern Europe was very interconnected in the ancient world, through ideals and travel and the market. There's a lot of different things going on in the ancient world connecting these places in Greece and Italy and North Africa, Alexandria, and of course the Levant.
Musa having a great weekend. Sure.
So yeah, that's kind of my focus area, is in particular though the Levant, ancient Israel.
Wow.
Cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm trying to think of comic books I can recommend to you.
You better, because I use my one fact as a joke, and I'm out.
R. Crumb adapted the Book of Genesis. I don't know if that would be helpful to read with pictures.
Huh. That would be interesting for sure.
It's wild. You know, I don't know if anyone's ever read the Old Testament, but there's this whole part in Genesis where they're like, so-and-so begat, so-and-so begat, so-and-so, they go through all these, and he draws each one of those people.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, I swear he's using references here, because that looks like Obi-Wan Kenobi. That looks like Charlton Heston. You know what I mean? Like,
well, why not? Yeah.
But
he's creative.
Yeah, it's annotated. I mean, he's got like a whole section in the back where he explains what he did and everything. And you know what's hilarious? He was on NPR when that book came out. It was really hard to get because it sold out. He was on NPR giving an interview, and somebody called in or something. There was a comment somehow that got to him through the host, and they said, "How dare you ridicule the Bible?" And he goes, "I got news for you. This is the most faithful adaptation you will ever fucking see of the Book of Genesis. If it's messed up, it's in the Bible. Like, my bad. Right. Like, I'm just telling you." He goes, yeah, part of it devolved into a bedroom comedy. That's not my fault. That's in the book.
Bedroom comedy. That's funny.
Like a bedroom sex comedy, like with Noah. And like, I forget the one guy and like his daughters. Like, there's some horrible stuff in there. You're like, what is this? And Crumb has notes in the back of the book where he's like, I really had to struggle with, like, what am I doing? Why am I adapting this? Why am I showing this stuff? But it's in there.
There's do it. Legitimate religious reasons. Like, there's a BYU professor named Bleak, I think, who's drawing stuff from the Book of Mormon that is normally, how do I put this? It causes people to question their faith when they find out what is actually described versus what the church has been showing them in terms of art, like Joseph Smith not looking at a seer stone. No one's going to know what I'm talking about. But the point being, there's something to be said for just being able to see something that's only ever been written before, you know?
Yeah, totally. And like, he's the guy to do it because he can do certain things in a way that makes it accessible, but also authentic. Like, he didn't just, like, I was joking around saying, didn't they all wear togas and sandals? Yeah. Like, he's really depicting it in a way that it was. It's historically accurate as far as he knows. And so that's why it was just funny that people, assuming, Christians, would criticize him for mishandling their sacred text when in fact he did not. And that's, I think they were like, well, you're not religious, how dare you? And he was like, okay, well, the book's public, It's a bestseller.
I was
Yeah,
reading
for
what
all
Lot's
time.
daughters
Book of
did.
Genesis Illustrated, right? All 50 chapters.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's
it's wild.
$15.99. I just looked it up.
Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
read. It's
It
really
should
fun.
it looks like it's something that everybody should just have.
It's a head scratcher though. I recommended it to David Feldman when he was on.
Really.
And he was like, "I love R. Crumb." And I was like, "There you go. Perfect."
Not only did I watch that episode, I remember that particular interaction. I remember thinking,
Yeah.
Feldman, what a classy guy. Look at you.
Although I mean, Crumb had some very problematic artwork.
Oh,
Yeah, I
He
think
will-
David
he's
Feldman was
very-
saying that's why he liked him. I don't know why I'm trying to cancel David Feldman. He didn't
Crumb
say
is
that
very
online.
open
Stop.
about his not just eccentricities, but like he's a he wears everying openly. Like he just lets it all out. It's like maybe shouldn't,
no.
but whatever.
No.
It's bad.
So Tony, this is a long-term project. Obviously, it's
Do you have a title?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the name of the book is Christianity in Crisis. Is the Christian Christ the Jewish Messiah? I'm mostly done with the book.
impressed.
So it will be locked in finish for final edits and reviews by this November. But yeah, I love this because I love engaging in. Let me give you guys a little treat that I discovered.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
The New Testament. So in Jesus's arrest scene in Mark, which is our first and earliest gospel, likely written between 67 AD and 75, we are told that the scribes, elders, and the high priest don't want to arrest Jesus during the day because it will cause some sort of uproar and riot because Jesus is very popular in Jerusalem at the time. So they plan to arrest Jesus at night in the Garden of Gethsemane. And what happens is that when Jesus is being arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane at night, Mark records in his 14th chapter, verses 51 through 52, that there was a quote unquote young boy who was loosely clothed only with a linen cloth. And when the police attempted to capture him, he escaped completely naked. And then we go to the next morning.
So
Now,
what conclusion do you draw? Was that devil? Was that Satan?
Okay, so as a historian, this is incredibly interesting to me because Mark is our first and earliest gospel. Matthew and Luke copy Mark arrest scene almost word for word, except for this here. And that means that according to the historical criteria of embarrassment, the likelihood that in fact there was a young boy present at Jesus' nighttime garden arrest is very likely.
Oh.
And if you go on to the internet where you can purchase books and you look for a fictional book called The God Symposium by a wonderful author, you will find that very scene you describe is also described there because it was fascinating to a gentleman by the name of Ed Draugelis, my daddy. I'm so delighted that you're writing an academic account of this.
Wow, full circle.
Wow,
that's wild.
There you go.
That is really cool.
And for those who, like me, have real difficulty reading between the lines and sometimes needed the author of a fictional book to sit you down and explain directly what they were trying to say, there's a chance Jesus might have had a lover with him. Chance in the book that was it could be interpreted in many ways.
Let's hear Antonio.
Well, so what's interesting though about this is Matthew and Luke, they completely delete this from their copying of Mark. But what's interesting, though, is in the absence of this, we can't understand why then did the crowd the very next morning turn on Jesus and demand his death and crucifixion? If just the day before, the high priest, elders, and scribes were so afraid to arrest Jesus because there was going to be a public uproar.
Right.
Well, even in our own day, we know that one thing that will turn a hero to a zero faster, and then nothing faster would be having a young, loosely clothed boy escape naked at your nighttime garden rest.
So what I don't, now I'm not speaking from like expertise, but I raised Catholic, there were people who would talk about, the Bible on a regular basis. And one thing that sort of put me off on the whole thing was, as far as looking at it as a historical document, was not only was there reinterpretations throughout the years, sometimes by people like, kings of England who didn't even believe in it, and they were having it translated, right? So there's interpretation that goes along with that. Things get lost in translation. But also, and this is kind of interesting, is that it was more like the people, and correct me if I'm wrong, if your research says anything otherwise, but there were communities built up around each apostle who they would preach to, and then they would go on to write a book, the book of, or whatever, right? Isn't that how it went down? And so then to me, it's like, well, I mean, we could play the phone tree, just the four of us, and distort something wildly in a matter of seconds. Like, I just wonder how much stuff. This is why I have trouble looking at it as historical document. I wonder if that ever comes up in your, your project, your writing.
Well, of course, all the time. So what we have here are 4 independent attestations of allegedly the same event. Okay. So what Christians will often do is harmonize the text across the literature. So for example, if you read the book of Mark, there is no angelic annunciation by the angel Gabriel to the mother Mary. There is no divine conception. There is no virgin birth of Jesus in the book of Mark. So if you think about this, in Mark's community, and that was the exact right way to think about this, Matt, in Mark's community, Jesus wasn't born of a virgin. The people who were left with Mark's gospel know nothing of Jesus's divine conception or virgin birth. And in fact, instead, what the people who have Mark's gospel in their community, Jesus is being baptized by John the Baptist in the river Jordan for the forgiveness of his sins. So in Mark's community, they don't have any idea that Jesus is even divine or God or anything like what Trinitarian Christians would say today. Whereas, for example, in John's text, what we would refer to as the Johannine community, they have a completely different view of Jesus. In John, there also is no virgin birth. There's no angelic annunciation. In John, we are told that Jesus is the Word, and that the Word was with God, and that the Word was God, and that the Word materialized into the atmosphere and became flesh in the man Jesus.
So you mean Jesus is not full of bronzer and has fake blondish hair? Wow.
Well, I think we now know through historical reconstruction that Jesus was played by Ewan McGregor.
I like Bill Burr's take. I heard a recent thing about Bill Burr talking. It was mainly about Musk and that Nazi salute, and he somehow gets on the topic of Jesus, and he goes, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if he really was just like some kind of surfer dude, kind of just like sandy feet and everything, that's cool. And I don't know how he got on that, but I do always have this image of Jesus as being like super laid back and chill. But this is the image we've been sold, right?
Yeah.
And it's not it to me. Like if somebody wants me to do Bible study, I'm immediately like, no thanks. But if somebody wants to go, does anyone want to like sit around and talk about like the Bible and how it actually came? I mean, it's a pretty popular book. It's not always coherent. How did it get written? What was left out? How was it interpreted? How was it translated? Like that stuff to me is fascinating. And I feel like a certain sadness for people who accept it as fact or historical document without ever having any sort of curiosity about that aspect of it. Because something that old has to be like, it can't what we have now cannot be in modern times the original.
But
right?
Tony's gonna blow it out of the water.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
It really does.
How long have you been on this?
I'm sorry.
How long have you been working on this?
So this is about 2 years of study into this particular topic. My background is in biblical study. I just really enjoy, so I've homed into this.
Yeah.
This guy's gonna like get famous off like a side project and then go on and be wildly successful on his day job. So
I
annoying.
hope so. Yeah, and
Well-
it doesn't have anything to do with the climate polycrisis.
No, it doesn't. So, like I said, it can be my escape.
Yeah. Real quick, you said you're focusing around Israel at this time, correct?
Yes.
What were the feelings of Jewish leadership post the death of Jesus? Because I would think, as a Jewish leader, I think, well, this guy was out there saying he's the Messiah, but he died, so that kind of solves that. When clearly that's not how it goes. What were their thoughts after the crucifixion? What was their feelings about Jesus? Or was it clear?
So I think one thing that people most times people don't understand the context of any given moment in history.
I don't like that.
So what's happening in ancient Israel is that the Jews are being occupied by Rome. So they're living under a very brutal occupation. Jesus is far from the only person that's claiming to be the Son of God or the Messiah. Now, in if you read the New Testament, it seems like he's literally the only person on earth that's ever done that. Well, of course, that's not true. And in fact, for about 100 years before Jesus and 100 years after Jesus, there would be over a dozen mainstream, or at least their names would survive to our history today, of quote unquote Messiah claimants. So the death of Jesus in his day would have only been a ripple. Okay. No one would have thought about the death of Jesus thereafter. Okay. But only his close friends. Okay. So in the first century, there would have been very little thought, because there are a lot of people who are dying who are claiming to be the Messiah. There are a lot of people who are dying who aren't claiming to be the Messiah.
Fortunately for Mr. Christ, his close friends were authors, so went well. But note, I didn't really think of that there was
other people,
that at the time Jesus was one of many people claiming to fulfill this
Jesus
prophecy.
just found the best mushrooms.
Well, it really isn't Jesus, it's Paul. Paul is
fucking Paul. It's always Paul. Yeah, fair enough.
Paul's the reason why Jesus survives to us in history. Of the 27 books in the New Testament, 13 are attributed to Paul, although today we understand that 6 were actually written by his hand, which is absolutely incredible. And what do I mean by actually written by his hand is that we are sure that what we have are copies of copies of copies of copies of copies of copies copies of what he actually wrote.
Wow.
But nonetheless, none of the disciples wrote to us. History does not understand that. Critical history doesn't understand that. None of the disciples wrote to us. Paul writes to us, and by writing to us, I mean to his churches in the ancient Mediterranean and Levant. He writes to the church in Corinth, to the Corinthians. He writes to the church in Galatia, to the Galatians in what we call today Turkey. He's writing to his book to the Romans in Rome, to Ephesus and to the Ephesians in Ephesus, to the Philippians in Philadelphia. And these letters are surviving because as churches are starting to spring up across the pagan Roman religion, across the ancient Mediterranean, they need to know how to organize themselves and deal with certain ecumenical problems. And so that's why the letters of church Paul survive, because they're fairly well written and organized as far as the Greek language goes, and they address specific problems. And we get the Gospels 20, 30, 40 years after Paul's letters.
Fair.
This is very
and
interesting.
For that
and
matter,
I'm never, well, I'm just saying that's very interesting. I'm never a person that is interested in religious history, but this is not just religious history. And you're uncovering some things that are very interesting. So I'd like to see how the reception of the book comes out. Yeah.
I'll be reading it, man. I have particular interest in what you chose to write about. That's
your dad was.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was always a Book of Matthew guy. I did not because of my name. I think that was the most accessible one. I don't know. I think that was the most user friendly gospel. And I was in the play Gospel, and which was a lot of fun because that was always like, more like it's fun to be hippies than it was being like, the characters from the Bible. But it's one of my favorite, I guess, chapter and verse. Yeah, it's been a while. I think it's like John 12:49, where it says, "For I did not speak of my own accord." Now, I didn't even know Jesus drove a Honda. Apparently he did.
You know what's funny is if you were to ask me what car would Jesus drive, a Honda makes a lot of sense. Inexpensive, it's a humble car.
He wouldn't talk about it.
I was going to say that or a Prius, because the new Honda.
I thought Prius at first. I thought Prius.
Yeah, he wore the sandals that go with the Prius.
He'd be the guy driving under the speed limit. He would drive under the speed limit in the commute, listening to podcasts and shit. Just like, I just don't want to be home yet. Just leave me in my little bubble for a while. And we're like, come on, dude.
Right.
Oh God,
that's very funny. Well,
the link I included, Matt. Don't feel obligated if you think it's gonna look too dumb. I don't want too many stipulations. That's a picture of Anthony Sweat's art. And I sent it just because it's an example of what Antonio was talking about earlier, where you eventually have the difficulty of combining different accounts of a religious event into one moment. And the reason this is such a busy looking scene is because it is exactly that for Mormons. A moment that Joseph Smith had that was frankly fundamental to the religion gets recounted in a couple of different ways, and the church says they are all true, or there's truth to all of them. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but then you have the difficulty of trying to depict something with conflicting accounts. I can only imagine, and that's just for a book that was written 200 years ago. Now you multiply that by 10.
That's nice.
My word. I cannot imagine the Gordian knot you have to untie to try to figure out what actually happened, man.
Yeah. No,
that's why it's so fun.
Yeah,
It's got to be
sure.
fascinating.
Difficult,
Yeah, it's got to be fascinating, and just here's the argument, or maybe not argument, but I would, anyone who, and I've come, I have friends and family who are like, no, the Bible is gospel, literally. And I would say, well, look, American history isn't what you've been taught. Then that's fairly fucking recent, right?
Yeah.
Like that just happened.
Yeah.
We had the printing press already.
Yeah, like there are people alive who were here for like a lot of the like long time ago stuff, and just showing you how long time ago it wasn't. Like it's amazing to me that people can't see that things would be distorted or just retold or something.
Well, the difficulty is, it really is hard for people to imagine, but English itself is new to us. It's very new to us. You go beyond 200 years and then the English that we're speaking just doesn't exist. You go 2,000 years, there's nothing like the language that we're speaking. And language is so derivative of culture. So I tell people when I talk about the biblical text, if you're just taking out your favorite translation and you're giving it your best read, and I imagine that most people are competent readers and they know how to read, and you're telling me whatever your plain textual reading, whatever that meaning is, that's what this means, you're almost certainly wrong.
Isn't there a passage in the Bible about that? Isn't there a passage in the Bible that says you're not supposed to just cherry pick shit to suit your own like vibe or whatever, like or your own situation? Like you can't. This is a full text. You have to know it front to back. You can't just say this part and that part, right? Isn't there something?
But you also have to know, when people, one of the things that I bring to light, the term Son of God, okay? What does that mean to you? Well, that's important. You should understand what a term means to you. But when you're thinking about a text from 2,000 years ago, from a different culture and a different language, it's actually more important to ask, well, what does this term mean to them? And then what you'll find, which is why I don't just study ancient Israel, but the ancient Mediterranean, is that there's a bunch of competing cultures that have very different concepts of exactly the same term. So what does Son of God mean then?
Yeah.
Yeah, and what does Messiah mean in Christianity versus the Jewish faith? Is there a difference? Is that the same thing? And was Messiah the original word that they used, or did somebody just insert that along the way?
My book title begs that question, right? It's Christianity in Crisis, : is the Christian Christ the Jewish Messiah?
Yeah.
So the Christian Christ is supposed to be the Jewish Messiah. So I'm calling attention to the fact that they're terminologically different. That should clue us into that there's a lot of difference between the two, and we're going to get into why, even though they should be the same thing.
Do you see things like just in your day-to-day where you're like, man, it's just like in my book, like history repeats itself, or like that same thing is happening all the time? Like how I said American history is just distorted and it's pretty recent, like there's no way this can't be. But like, I mean, when you say all the time, are you saying hour to hour, day to day, or week to week? How frequently?
Because the thing is, humans, the reason why history looks like it repeats itself or it rhymes is because humans don't change. We're still evolutionarily the same animal we were during the rise of the Egyptian Empire, the Roman Empire, the Ottomans, the antebellum South. we're still that same animal. The only difference is we have a lot more toys. And so you see the same personality types. I mean, Henry Ford and Elon Musk, I mean, those are two peas in the pod. Or, you know, in the United States, a black man would become president before a white woman. Black men got the right to vote before white women. You see these cultural pathologies throughout the history of a nation. Okay. And that just has a lot to do how the people understand themselves. And that's why you get what appears to be these repeats, because we're still essentially dealing with the same core problem, our humanity.
Yeah. Our humanity, the core problem that's leading
and I
us
keep
down the
hoping
road.
solution rarely is.
Do you write about free will at all? Is that part of this? That's because that's one of the things that people get hung up on a lot is, if God has a plan for us all, why do we have free will? Well, that's part of his plan. Well, but doesn't that contradict like a plan, like anything can happen factor? It's like, oh no, God knows what's going to happen. It's like, I don't get it. Do you, those aspects to me are always sort of mysterious. And the whole, you know, I don't know if it's an excuse or just what people say is, you know, God works in mysterious ways is sort of like, to me, it's always been kind of a write-off. But do you get into that at all?
I do a little philosophizing just because I have to make sure things are working in my brain as I'm conceiving. So for me, the easy get around, and I don't know if this is easy or not, I'm going to try to explain it very simply, is that everything you said about the contradiction between God knowing the future and free will is true if the future is linear. However, if you think about the future as an ensemble, as there are many different futures.
Right.
Okay.
Choose your own adventure is what we're doing here.
Yes.
And God sees every outcome.
Right.
And he's waiting to see which one you, okay.
Which one you choose.
I could buy that.
Whichever
if you believe.
Whichever future you choose then condenses into the reality. And, you know, without getting into quantum mechanics, we can actually really do a good job justifying this model. And it's not contradictory.
I would say the problem, interestingly, the problem of God being perfect and having a plan that you are supposed to follow with your free will actually lines up with the totally secular problem of determinism. If everything comes down to just essentially a pool shot that's very complicated, you could actually, if you had enough knowledge of the position and momentum of atoms in the universe, you could predict what would happen next and you would be correct. But I think what's interesting is even if we discovered that is the case, and there's no question about it, it wouldn't change in a secular worldview your responsibility for, say, a crime or anything else, because part of that motion is still part of that chemical reaction is your thoughts about it and how you choose to pilot this meat suit that is your body. I think the same thing is true in a religious worldview where you believe in an infallible God. Even if God knows what you're going to do already, your thoughts about it, your decision is still part of the process, the earthly process of it happening. And I think it essentially amounts to a gigantic equation that a divine being has done. That leaves room also for yes, and that all gets squared away in terms of there's different possible futures.
Now, Jake, I will say, so the underlining assumption that I think that you're making that I would disagree with as someone of Jewish faith is I don't think that God is infallible or that God is all knowing.
I thought we were talking about from a Christian faith, but fair enough.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that people of the Jewish faith don't think of God as infallible.
Well, I
Intriguing.
don't speak for all Jews, but I was just in a very rigorous Torah study last week, and I would say that of the 20 people that were there, maybe 3 would have a view of infallibility or something like that. So I have a very different view. In fact, my rabbi leads with God's been wrong before.
Wow.
Which, I laugh because that almost might be a blasphemous thing. I don't know. But
There's no way there's not a word for a God mistake. What do you call a mulligan for God?
I think
It sounds like a setup for a joke. I don't have it. But
I think God covers it. The word God would just cover it, right? Because these are all things that are beyond our ability to conceive, right?
Especially when you're like me and
there's
you don't believe any of it. Oh, sorry.
Well, surely there's terminology. Like, what is there within the faith? Is there like a phrase or a word that means, yes, this was a mistake, but it was a holy mistake? Or am I overthinking it?
Yeah, because God doesn't depend on, there's no salvation, or like God can't be condemned to hell or something like that, right? Like God is outside
a lot
of
of
all
times, because what will happen is unfortunately Christianity and many of its perspectives have kind of, even Matt referred to what I would call the Hebrew Bible in English. He called it the Old Testament. A lot of views of the quote unquote Old Testament perspectives arrive to us from a Christian perspective or Christological thinking. And so we confront these blatant contradictions in the text all the time. God tells us that people will not live beyond 120, and then we find people living beyond 120 everywhere in the text. And almost like, geez, God, I mean, was the best way to prove that Abraham was committed to you was to potentially have his like,
what the fuck?
You really think that one all the way through?
Couldn't think of anything else.
And then it turns out you put a lot of effort into getting the Hebrews out of Egypt, only to have them all die in the desert anyways.
To walk around in 40 years that if in an area where if you had all held hands and stood shoulder to shoulder, you would have crossed it by God.
Oh boy.
So what I like to think in my Jewish walk is that we're all learning together. You, me, my mom, and God.
Okay. I like that.
That's really it. I keep, because there are just certain things whenever I allow myself to start thinking about this, I'm always like, well, I was actually raised to believe that if I don't believe in God, I will go to hell. And I immediately was like, well,
That's
then
gonna be
fuck
so
that guy. I mean, what an egomaniac. Why would I?
That's
why would
a
I
horrible thing.
give a shit what that guy thinks, right? But
Jewish hell is so, oh man. Exactly the opposite. I was like, oh,
what is Jewish hell?
Yes. You know what? And I told my rabbi, what's the time?
I can make a lot of jokes.
I'm definitely right. I'm definitely going to Jewish hell. So Jewish hell is called Gehenna, and
wait, not Gehenna?
Well, depending on your, I guess, pronunciation, but yes. And you only go there for you can go for 12 months if you're Hitler, but most people, the vast majority
I've never heard this,
will go to Gehenna essentially to have it's a spiritual rehab. And most people will go for less than a year, and then once you're done with spiritual rehab, you get to come to the renewed earth.
That is so much like, as a disclaimer, no, I don't believe in any of this stuff, but I feel a kinship with people that do. for various reasons. But to me, if you're discussing the concept of a hell, that's the only one I've ever heard of that makes sense. Like, it's a rehabilitation. Like, all right, I understand the function that would serve then. Fair, interesting, and not at all what I thought, despite having multiple Jewish people that I know personally to apparently never asked them about their religion.
Hell is not in Judaism. Hell is not emphasized. It's not threatened. I don't even know if I've ever heard a Jewish person say, "I hope you go to hell" or something like that.
Yeah,
even
literally never.
Insultingly. Because I mean, think about that, especially with that concept. I hope you go to spiritual rehab. Oh, thank you. I need some. No, really.
I hope you get juvie.
Like, I would take a year right now to go to spiritual rehab and then just die and go straight. Like, I would do that anytime. That does not sound. Look, if that's a consequence to my actions, okay. I mean,
dude, imagine showing up to a party after getting a DUI, you know, and then imagine you've got to stay at that party for eternity. Like, it'd be awkward. It'd be real awkward.
Oh
like,
my God.
Hey, didn't you die a year ago? Yeah, I had to stop by. It's not important. I was not great. Hi. It'd be too awkward.
There was a lot of fear mongering, and people always talk about how, like, I was saddled with guilt and a guilt complex for the rest of my fucking life. I swear to God. Like, they tried to ruin everything. And they do it in this, it's all gaslighting, right? And they do it in this way that makes you feel like I'm not good. But if I stick with this program, there's hope, right? Like, that's really, and there is no one I could describe that to who was there at the time that would go, Matt, that is totally not what we were saying. They'd be like, no, that's, you got it. That's what we were saying. And so even now, like, I've spent the majority of my life, I'm just turned 50. I spent the majority of my life outside of the religion, but I swear to God, it affects every decision I make.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well, it's not like
kind of,
it's not painful. It's just sort of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that, what's that?
You're a recovering Catholic.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm an adult recovering, but I think that discussions like this are still fascinating because it gives me a chance to, and this is a very Christian thing, it gives me a chance to forgive the people who brought me up that way, priest, everyone, because think of the circumstances in their lives and all the factors that contributed to the way they are or the way they were when I was a kid.
Worldview, right.
And for the most part, they were just doing what they thought was right, although it sucked. You know what I mean? It was like, it's a pain in the ass even now. But like, if these conversations help me realize that they were misled or misguided or just had it wrong, didn't have it straight, then think about what that would do if they had these discussions then. And I think that as time moves on, these sorts of discussions and books like what you're writing are far more socially acceptable than just in the recent past. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
It's not taboo anymore.
No, it's really, thank goodness, to the fields of critical scholarship and biblical studies, really paving the way for this. Because there was a time where if you were engaged in any type of biblical study, it was always under the branch of a seminary, a religious school, and really religious institutions had complete hold over the biblical text. And so, of course, I mean, even today, if you go to religious seminaries, they'll tell you that you have to pledge allegiance to a certain creed before you publish works, that there's certain things that you won't include.
You have to start by saying, I'm going to arrive at this conclusion, and then do your research, and then say what your conclusion that
And to me, as a historian, and now again, I'm not a biblical historian, so I'm stepping into this field. And of course, what Jake just said, when I found that that's essentially true and it's much worse than that, I was shocked because like, well, how can you actually even do any sort of history with those type of parameters? I mean, any of my professors told me that I had to start with a conclusion.
Okay.
Right.
How is that academics?
Well, and go backwards and study it. So you have the conclusion. So you're looking for all of the information that brought you there. It's kind of science. Science is starting with that thesis. It's not always a conclusion, but
we got raided
Hey!
from Dan from the internet. Thanks, Dan,
Hey!
friend of the show.
I did want to bring up one thing to Tony. Right now, I have been listening to Joanna Macy. Her latest, she's an environmental activist, author. She's a scholar of Buddhism and general systems theory and deep ecology. And I'm sure you know who she is. This latest, she's 95. She's made a new podcast. It's probably going to be her last, which she's been saying. Now, the Buddhist theories, and it feels good. I don't follow religion, but are you familiar with Joanna? Because in every
No, I'm not. No, I'm
Oh,
not.
all right. You might want to. I think she's helping me, and my mom's listening at the same time. But she's a spiritualist. Now it's Buddhism, which she followed, and the tenets of Buddhism. Does Buddhism have a relationship to does Catholicism or Judaism have any kind of relationship to Buddhism at all? Or is it just, okay, these are different studies and we don't believe in that? Like,
I will say they're different traditions that grew apart. Well, obviously not Catholicism and Judaism,
right.
but in terms of those Abrahamic faiths and Buddhism, those religions grew up separately in different traditions due to geography.
Oh, sure.
In time.
It was Asian. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I just wanted to say that was what I was listening to. I didn't know if you were familiar because a lot of people are. She was she was involved with Michael Dowd and that group of people, the spiritualists in the climate community. And so okay, cool. I'm going to have to turn you on.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there anything in the Bible about the earth will be fine? It's humans that'll be fucked. Is there anything like that? Is there any parallel to that idea? Is there anything like that? Is there anything about climate change? Is there anything about, if you do this wrong, you're not going to make it as besides Noah's Ark,
Yeah, so I don't think, and that's not the way, I don't consider it's really difficult how I describe myself. I'm mostly a spiritual Jew, so I don't have any, I'm not fixated on what the Bible says in terms of how I live my life. I think that would be a very difficult thing for someone to do in honesty. But to answer your question short, no. There's nothing in the biblical text, as I understand it, that is a warning of the coming climate change or that in the absence of good stewardship of the planet, even though the Bible actually, what is interesting is in Genesis, that is God's first charge. Is that
stewards of the planet.
Which of course we've absolutely not done a good job of that.
No, a hideous job.
And that does lead to Noah's Ark, the global flood, the global catastrophe. So I guess there is a little bit of a parallel there. Yeah. But no, I don't think there's anything direct without stretching, and I don't like to do that.
Don't you think it would be okay? Look, I get it. We want the best for everyone, even the bad guys. I kind of don't more and more though. And I think that although I'm against the concept of internal damnation, I think it's fear mongering. I can't get my head around it. I do think it would be hilarious for these so-called, Christians who are just not, right, who think Jesus would have been anti-immigrant and a gun owner or whatever. I think it'd be funny if they woke up in hell. I think that would be hilarious. Like in that case, I'd be like, this would be
Well,
okay.
here's the thing. So there's no parallel to climate change.
Right.
But in terms of, this is actually one of God's like big things. If you treat foreigners in your land wrong, you're done. You're done.
You're pretty clear about that.
Yeah, well, it's all.
I guess we're done.
All over the place. So people are going to have a strange time. You know, maybe because I'm Jewish, I'm extremely excited by the idea of my afterlife trial, my divine trial. But supposedly there's going to be a trial before God, and I can just imagine people would be in a lot of shock to realize that some of their, what they think are core views, that Jesus would ride around with an AR-15 shotgun and a beer.
There is, I always bring this up.
I have never read the Bible.
There's that video of Jesus and he's walking around like he's by a river and he's talking to people and it's very like, you know, it's a reenactment, and he's saying all of the right-wing talking points that they would ascribe to Jesus, and it just seems so ridiculous.
So bad.
It's supposed to, but it's just, it really does paint a picture like this is just absurd.
Okay, Tony, how do you reconcile all of your science? I mean, you're a scholar in science and you know a lot about what's going on. You've studied. How do you reconcile this with a religious belief, you know, in the science belief?
Well, I don't have a religious belief.
Okay.
I don't.
That's why I'm asking.
Something I told my rabbi just a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I don't characterize anything in my life as something that I believe in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even really know in terms of a practical application what the word believe means in my own life.
Okay.
So I consider myself a spiritual person, and I try to pursue an internal spiritual balance. And if I believe in anything, I do believe that life is always trying to achieve balance, or what we call homeostasis. And there are different ways for people to do that. And so for me, what I get out of my Judaism is our sense of belonging, our sense of community, our sense of engagement. And the rituals really help pull us together and bring a sense of place.
Right.
For us.
Okay. Gotcha. I understand.
So it's not a religious quote unquote thing for me.
No, but it's a spiritual belonging, and it's something that's into your core. Yeah, like a lot of the people that we know that do follow the Buddhists, a lot of people in the science community that want to have spirit or have a spiritual feeling are Buddhists or follow it, you know, or have tried the principles. Lots of people.
Isn't okay, am I wrong about that? I wrote about this in one of my books, which they're fictional, and so I didn't care if it was true or not. But isn't there a thing in science where there's always an element that's unexplained, and it's the hand of God or the God factor or something like that?
In science, you can we use confidence intervals, and nothing. You're never going to get 100%, right? There's always that 1% that Jesus did rise from the dead.
Yeah.
This is why doctors are always practicing medicine and have yet to like finally figure it out.
Right, because there's always that chance that the unbelievable happens to be it, right?
That's mind blowing.
The layman's term, like
sure.
degree of certainty, which I love from the community of scientists, which are all faiths, of course. But I love that way of thinking of things. Like, how certain are you? 99% certain, which means basically certain. As close as I can get to being
and then
positive.
you go for academic funding to explore the 1%.
Yeah,
you want to see
that's fascinating too.
Yeah.
Do you want to see a couple seconds? Do you want to see a
What?
couple seconds of GOP Jesus?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Of course.
So there's some music, and I don't know if this music is copyrighted, so we gotta like cut it quick. But this will give you enough. This is enough
Roll
for
it,
you
baby. Roll it.
to get a picture.
Truly I say unto you, whoever welcomes one of these little ones in my name might be letting in a murderer or a drug. Let's get her to a detention center. Yeah. Figure out what's going on.
This is.
I was hungry.
Oh, no.
You gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. And behold, now I'm all lazy and entitled. You shouldn't have do unto others as you suspect they might want to do unto you. What is a man profited if he gain the whole world but lose his soul? A lot. He has profited a lot. One soul for the whole world, that is an amazing deal. Why do you look at the speck of dust in your brother's eye but ignore the plank in your own? Because of her emails. If a man strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him and shoot him. That is the law. If you want to be perfect, go. Sell all the possessions that you have and give the money to a solid mutual fund. By this, they will know that you are my disciples. That you say, Merry Christmas! Christ! Christmas! That's my name in there, and I put it in there because I wanted it in there so we can all celebrate Big Boy Jesus' birthday time! Okay? Okay.
So petty.
Rabbi, surely you can heal me.
My child, of course I could. But who would pay for it?
I don't understand. I don't have any money.
Yes, it is a sad story, but it does not make me responsible. It is super duper easy for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. The richer, the better, really. Maybe get a solid gold house, just to be sure. Love your neighbor as yourself. Unless you are better than your neighbor, then tell them that they're weird and you do not want to bake them a cake. You have heard it said, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say to you, any man who looks upon a woman with lust in his heart should go ahead and do what he's got to do.
Lord, your followers grow hungry and we have only this fish and bread.
Oh, sweet.
Oh God.
Oh, that. Yeah,
That
that's
was good. We needed that.
Boo.
I hope this actor winds up at other stuff.
that's fucking great, right?
Oh, we needed that.
Oh,
I'm always surprised people haven't seen that. I feel like,
You know what? I think I have seen it, but it still felt brand new to me.
but I mean, that really paints a picture, right? That really illustrates our situation here. Like, have a gold house. You know what I mean? Like, they're
Or toilet.
to be looking at these guys as anything but Christian. I'm sorry, and it's like,
Yep.
if you want to be offended by someone like mistreating your religion, you don't have to look very far. But anyway, yeah, I think that was when he goes, she goes, I'm sick, I need health, and she's like, heal me. He goes, yeah, but who will pay for it? That's insane. It's not. And when they say it's
True.
it's a
Who will pay
privilege,
for
not
it?
a right. It's
And
like, geez.
certainly now it's not going to be Medicare or Medicaid if they have their way.
But I mean, he's basically saying bootstraps in there, you know? It's just really funny.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is that
The
was
bootstrap.
that was particular poignant. You know, I know that there's been so much in the headlines over this last little bit, but on the back, on the heels of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, being gunned down by Luigi Mangione. Yeah, I mean,
Blue Cross immediately repealing their "we're going to make you pay for anesthesia." Yeah.
So many people are just praying for Luigi's, multiple Luigi's.
I keep talking about the guy who took over for that CEO, the next guy. He's a company man. He's been with them since 2008. And he immediately came out and said, he goes, I think he was doing a great job. I'm going to pick up where he left off. And I'm like, and you're saying this in public.
I mean,
wow.
But like you said, rich people, the richer you are,
They
$10
think
million a
different.
year will definitely make you tone deaf.
Yeah, you just
I
aren't.
mean, really tone deaf. That guy, the last guy got gunned down in the street. He didn't.
I mean,
they are very bubble. They live in a bubble. Just like my friend, you know, that I was talking to earlier, who is defending, saying, well, just give it time. It's only been a few weeks about this, what's going on, that we're losing our democracy.
Crazy.
And I mean, you live in a bubble, bitch. I mean, I like her, but you live in a bubble. Where what media does she consume?
I've been hate watching this one TV show, and there's two couples at dinner. It's called White Lotus. There's two couples at dinner, and two of them are super rich, and the other two are the other couple is like newly rich, right? And they were like, it like came up that the other ones didn't vote, and they're like, you didn't vote? And the lady's like, I'm pretty sure I voted. I don't know, honey, did I vote? I think I voted.
What is?
And they're like, you would know. It's called White Lotus. It's like a soap opera kind of thing on HBO. And they're like, well, with everything going on in the world, I mean, aren't you concerned? And they're like, what do you mean? And they're like, the world's fucked up. And they're like, how so? It's like, guys, don't give up. You can't see past your dollar bills. Like, there's
my
there's
assistant
no way.
told me I'm nailing it, and she's like 23, so she's pretty hip. I think I'm nailing it. And there's nothing wrong with it.
White Lotus, and
I'm gonna put it. I want to watch it.
Well, look, I got through this. There's a reason. Okay, I'm not gonna spoil anything. Trust me. But the first episode of the first two seasons is kind of a reason to watch the whole season. You want to see. There's something that happens in the first episode where you're like, oh, now I got to see.
Yeah.
What
I'm looking for
happened.
something
So,
for the weekend.
Because then it's like, now we'll go back 1 week. And every episode is a day of the week while these people are on vacation at a hotel called the White Lotus. And it's in a different spot around the world. But I would argue that upon finishing season 2, it is anti-feminism. So maybe I'm just a little too left. Maybe I'm a little too...
Okay, I'll have
maybe
to watch
everything's problematic. Maybe I'm a little too pedantic these days, but that shit was a little anti-feminism. And
I'll watch it.
My wife was like, it's a soap opera. And I was like, well, then that's what soap operas are. Anti-feminism. I did not like it. I thought it can be entertaining, but I think at a minimum, this stuff should be entertaining.
But does everything have to be politically correct?
No, but I mean, there is a long-standing problem with cinema and television in the mistreatment of female characters. Like, when are we gonna fix this shit, right?
That's true. You're right.
A guilty pleasure of mine is, and maybe I shouldn't say this on the
internet.
internet.
Oh, go ahead.
Hit us.
So I watch Desperate Housewives. Well, I am.
I loved it. You are now. I loved it.
So I am watching Desperate Housewives. So this is the second time that I've ever watched. I watched it before when I was younger as a kid because my mom would always watch it on Sunday during dinner time. So this is my first time watching it as an adult. So what's interesting is there's Gabrielle Solis, and I forget her real name, but she's the very pretty
actress. Yeah.
So in the show, she's dating. No, she's not dating. She's having an affair with her gardener John,
Right.
who is
Right. I remember
17
it.
years old. So she is, yes. And in the
Completely
show, people
inappropriate.
I did
become
not realize this was going on. Okay.
in the show, people
Hang on.
become aware that she's doing this. And she's 30, like 30 or 30 plus in the show. And then she ends up almost sleeping with another of one of John's friends later in the show.
90s TV.
No, this is
Or
this
2000s.
is,
2000s.
yeah, this is like 2004 to 2009.
I know,
right?
I watched it.
Oh, Jerry Springer was still on the air.
I
Yeah.
watched it.
So
That fucked
and then
everything up.
she ends up getting in another relationship with another of the teenage boys in the neighborhood.
Now
I'm
she'd be in prison.
Well, but no, I'm just juxtaposing this to the social atmosphere today, where people are afraid that trans and gay people are grooming kids and adults. And here is one of America's, just 20 years ago, one of the biggest shows in America. And you're having this woman grooming kid after kid in the neighborhood. People in the show know about it, and that's kind of okay. The audience knows about it, and nobody's in an uproar. It's so interesting how people have double standards.
I'm going to assume it's in a state where the age of consent is less than 17, just to make the rest of this argument.
I don't know. Where was it?
Wow.
I'm not sure. Oh, where is it taking place?
I thought it was California. Yeah.
Well, let's just assume for the sake of the conversation, let's just assume that the age of consent in that state was less than 17. Doesn't change the fact that it's a 30-year-old diddler. Still,
do you remember like
real quick? And the problem was that nobody had a problem with it. Nobody was like, ew, we can't show this. Like, people were like, oh, this will be a scandal and it'll be fun and a little bit cheeky. And like, not one person was like, this is a child banging an adult.
But
that's
try
to make money off that.
That's the thing, Jake. They did, because in the show, it gets brought up how terrible and horrible it is by the mom of John.
Yeah.
But they keep on using this as an
that.
antidote in the show. So it's just like, that's why it's even more crazy. Like, so there's an acknowledgement that this is socially disruptive, to say the very least.
Right.
But it just, oh God.
Okay. It said it was a fictional town of Fairview in the fictional Eagle State, whatever that was. So Wisteria Lane. So it was supposed to be any subdivision, any town,
any cul-de-sac USA. Do you remember like Comedy Central would sort of go off the air? I think it was Comedy Central, maybe it was the E Network, and then it would be Girls Gone Wild for like several hours, like infomercials about drunk girls taking their tops off and stuff.
I would just watch the infomercials.
That strikes me as very like they're wasted. Oh, when did you get their consent? After they had sobered up and watched the video and then said, yeah, okay, that's cool.
Right.
Like, holy shit. Like that, talk about corruption. Like that stuff to me, like at the time I was like, this is dumb. I mean, I like to drink, but not like that's wild, like that's over the top. They're exploiting these women. But now I look at it like, wow, when did they verify their age? Did they have IDs on in those bikinis and in their underwear? I mean, it's like that. This all seemed like they were just grabbing girls off beaches and the streets and stuff to do this, and it was right there on like cable TV. It was that was crazy. That stuff. I'm surprised there hasn't been documentaries about that.
We are, as a society, and when I say we, I mean Americans, but Western culture generally, we are a fundamentally amoral society, and I don't mean that as to say immoral, but like there's a lot. The main people who claim to be moral within our society aren't. They don't have like principles or anything like that. They're just in positions where they're allowed to say that. So it'll be like a principal or a teacher or not. This is, I don't know why I'm doing. It'll be like a church leader or principal or somebody like that, and they get like credit for being moral people, and they're against all the popular things it is to be against. But there are so few people who actually sit down and have difficult conversations with themselves about what they are doing and the philosophy around what they're doing.
Amoral.
There's just there's no interest in morality, and it's a bummer, man.
It reminds me of, again, to bring up Luigi Mangione, when they did this stunt of a perp walk, which was just absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, and the mayor was there, like he's the good guy, not a criminal or anything.
That's the thing. Between Luigi Mangione, Brian Thompson, and Eric Adams, mayor of New York, only Luigi Mangione was the only person that wasn't under federal investigation or indictment before the murder. And so to have Eric Adams, the mayor, for Eric Adams to say, I'm going to lead from ahead, I don't lead from behind. You mean in criminal activity?
Right. Takes one to know one.
As you're doing the perp walk, you yourself are under federal indictment, not just
So the irony's all over in so many situations in the United States.
Oh, sure.
But yet other countries, I'm sure, have similar situations, but not quite as out there and ironic that people with a brain can see. Wow.
Well, just like, they said they're going after Putin, like, oh, Putin was a top guy in the Kremlin, top guy at KGB. And I said, yeah, but our president, Herbert Bush, was the top guy at the FBI. The FBI is the National Terrorist Police. So,
worse, CIA.
Yeah, it was CIA.
Oh, right.
Worse.
They
He's the assassin guy.
They sent them termination letters if they want to be. And I'm thinking today, I saw that. Okay, so Musk's DOGE is sending the CIA letters, right? He better watch his ass. These fuckers are not to be messed with. I think there's going to be many. I was asking today how many CIA agents are named Luigi.
Honest to God, I've had this thought, which is that there's the deep state, which Trump talks about all the time.
That's them.
Really just the existing rules that we already knew about. And
But
isn't
it
a real
is
thing.
them.
But there is I'm not even sure that I believe this, but there is reason to believe, to the point that it's been depicted in Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
That the CIA sometimes gets rid of problematic political figures. And we live in a country and a time where I would just say, Donald Trump, you're going to keep going until somebody who's quiet and dangerous.
Yeah. We don't have
and write something on a piece of paper.
They created the drug trade and it's just amazing. But somebody asked, this was in the Vanguard chat. Somebody sent in a super chat to the Vanguard today saying somebody should draw a picture of, and then they described what it was. And the Vanguard was like, somebody should get the Letterhack to do that. And I drew it, and then I was like, I can't put this shit on the internet. And not because I'm afraid to offend Elon Musk or Donald Trump, fuck them, but because my YouTube channel will be demonetized. The IRS will audit me. Do you know what I mean? Like my father-in-law won't get his Medicaid pay. Like,
oh my gosh.
Or Social Security.
Yeah.
A flip of the switch. All that stuff can happen, like with a little programmer.
That's how we feel now. I do have a thing to say about this whole New World Order and all that.
Right.
QAnon, haven't they realized that they are looking at the New World Order? That Musk and the tech bros and Trump, they are trying to make the New World Order. You hear nothing. These people are saying nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Everybody expects it to be
it's
like
a cult.
a smoke-filled room, and it's just not. It happens right out in the
Well,
open.
I mean, I'm just saying you're right.
No,
But
I'm saying you're right.
the goddamn hypocrites that
I'm rephrasing what you're
scream.
saying. They're
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
QAnon folks are like, "Oh, where's the secret conspiracy?" There
It's
is
in a
no
pizza
secret
place.
Whack jobs.
conspiracy.
I mean,
right out in your
It's out in
face.
the open.
And there's
Yeah,
no
exactly.
need for the backdoor smoke-filled rooms. We
Yeah.
got the courts, we got the Congress. Who don't we have? There's no reason to be covert anymore. I
No,
mean,
they're blatantly taking everything away.
I mean,
Yeah, I
look at
always
what
thi-
my senator did during the COVID crisis. They were getting news that the markets were going to get hit. He dumped millions of dollars. I mean, these guys just don't care. I mean, we're
don't.
way past that. We're way past that now.
Yeah.
I always
And
think of
our
the
children. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're right. But I always think of the Jason Bourne movies where they show a whole bunch of people in a room in front of big monitors and they're like, okay, people, find me Jason Bourne. And they start looking at all the cameras and they're like touching base with like different spies and stuff. Now I always go, that's not real. It's just somebody in a parking lot going, yeah, let's check some cameras. And then one guy does it and has to like get a pot of coffee going. He works all night and he circles back and he's like, yeah, we found him on some CCTV footage in this country or whatever. My point is, I might not be exactly right, but my point is that our perception of how government works is based on fucking movies and TV.
Yes.
No one's ever been. I mean, have
No,
any of us here ever been inside the room to go, oh shit, they got a real operation going here? I don't think they do have sophistication.
No.
I
At
think
the
it's
local level,
messy
yeah.
and stupid.
And
A long
at
time
the
ago,
local
you-
level, I can attest to, or at least at the state government level, yeah, you're exactly correct.
I think
It's
it was
a
like
bunch of idiots.
you get like 3 Edward Snowdens working in like close knit cubicles doing a lot of fucked up stuff. Because like Elon Musk rolls in, he's got some 20 somethings who can write code, and they say, oh, they're just there to read code. Really? Why didn't you get guys that are really good at reading code instead of writing code? But anyway, they roll in with just some dickheads. Like, we don't know who the fuck these guys are, right? They're not elected. Who knows? They're not vetted at all. Like, we have these hearings where it's like Pete Hegseth, he needs to be questioned. We need to hear his answers. But Musk, you and your boys roll in, do what you're gonna do. Like,
It's
you want to talk about
so crazy.
guardrails? Like, there just are none. So when
It's crazy.
yeah, and so when people think of like government as these real sophisticated operations where people are like looking at monitors and making all this stuff happen, I don't think it's like that. I think it's more like The Office.
Because it's a conocracy. It's a government run by con artists, and the reason that is possible is that we have 80 million willing victims.
I think those movies are fun, but I think you need to come out of there and have somebody at the door in the theater going, that's not true. It's not really like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's weird, but you know what I'm saying? Like, we need to remember, nice foil hat.
Yes,
We need to
because I have a
remember that
question.
they're like the old West cowboy movies is not how it was. You know what I mean? Like, all this stuff, it's not. This goes back to what we were saying about, can we trust the Bible to be a historical document? The amount of stuff that we know or think we know about the way things work is just from like, fiction, movies and shit.
Yeah, and he was talking about Paul's letters that were like only came out 30 years after he wrote them, or over the course of 30 years. Bear in mind, Paul didn't become a Christian till well after the death of Christ. So add on those two factors, you're looking at 100 years before the relevant stuff is being talked about. Yeah, you're right. We have it's so difficult for the common person to understand. I'm sorry. I'm more interested in the foil hat now.
I need to ask a question, and I want to know if I am being a conspiracy theorist about this. And I would like to know if they have now the controls and the keys to the treasury. 8 million people are disabled in the United States on disability. And am I wearing a tinfoil hat when I say that they don't care if we all die and they're going to cut us off? Is it
No.
is it paranoia? Are they going to
This
say,
has been
we don't need 8 million people sucking off Social Security disability? Goodbye. Am I wearing my tinfoil hat? Am I showing my paranoia?
the fight for healthcare, whether it be for able-bodied people or people with disabilities, has been ongoing from the founding of this country. And it's been a desperate fight. I mean, we are at a time, I know in my state, actually funds for disabilities are oftentimes the first funds in the healthcare sector that are often chosen to be cut by municipalities and by states. And so, even the idea of having special healthcare services, even today I was hearing about how IDEA, which is the federal program that provides education assistance for people with intellectual developmental disabilities, is now under target, being cut. So you're absolutely not wrong to think that
I'm terrified.
that many people are going to be hurt, and unfortunately, as always, it is the most vulnerable amongst us.
Well, I am disabled and I am on disability, as are 7,999,000 others. And I'm not old enough to have Social Security, and I cannot work because I can't sit for a long time and I can't stand for a long time and I have illnesses, blah, 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 blah. I make it look like it's easy to be me, but it's not. And I am scared because I feel like they're not going to care about us.
Yeah. And here's like, this is where I try to swim back to the surface, and the depths being like despair and fear, right? And if I swim back, I think to myself, this blizzard of activity they're doing right now, they're trying to get as much done as possible because this shit is not popular, and they know that in 2 years they're going to lose Congress, or that they could. We have to make that happen. Not only do we have to make that happen, anybody with a fucking webcam, and if you don't have one, consider firing one up and getting on board with this. We have to get people to vote in the primaries, and we got to primary the do nothing Democrats out.
Yeah,
people who are saying, "Oh, democracy is going to end," and now they're not. They should be voting fucking no on everything, and they're not. They should be turning Congress into a procedural minefield, and they're not. There's all kinds of things they can do to muck up the system and slow it down, and they're just letting it happen
because we have limp noodles like Chuck Schumer, who
they're
needs
all
to
funded
be primary.
They're all kind of funded by the exact same people. If you go up just a little bit, you'll see. But the thing is, not only do they have to lose in 2 years, in 2026, but we need new blood. We need fresh candidates. And that's why we have to MoveOn.org, Justice Democrats, Indivisible. You may be able to find things that you can nitpick over each one of those organizations individually, but they are coming together. They're united to show resistance and to promote new and better candidates. And nothing is perfect out there, so we got to get behind that shit. It's only 2 years. That's why they're scrambling to get all this shit passed through right now, and that's why they're just wrecking balls.
Only 2 years.
So,
Dante, if you're watching, I didn't pay him to say that. We need new blood. Run for office.
Yeah,
Seriously.
and you know what? No matter what the big picture is with the climate and the poly crisis and the plastic crisis and all that, we still have to do this because we're still here.
Preach, sister.
Yeah, and so it's terrifying. Believe me, I want to throw up right now just thinking about this. But we, 2 years, it's gonna feel like a lot. I can't believe we're in week 2. It feels like it's been going months already.
I know,
but we can do it. We can get there.
I mean, what gives me some hope or inspiration is to see how many people have come out in Los Angeles and in other cities protesting.
We should talk about that. Yeah.
They did today.
Yeah, the Trump deportations. Because I as I'm watching this, and I don't have any, as far as I'm aware, I don't have any type of Latino or Hispanic descendants, and you don't need to feel sympathy and empathy with people who are living in fear now, that they're going to be drugged out of school or drugged out of church or work or whatever it might be, and treated like an animal. And it is disgusting because, you know, as a historian, we've all asked ourselves time and time again, I'm sure that we've asked ourselves at one point in time in our own lives, if we were there in Nazi Germany when we saw these thugs coming in our neighborhoods, coming in our synagogues, and what have you, and doing this, what would you do? What would you say? And then to see the news, these local news outlets, which, I mean, I know they're all owned by the same conglomerates these days, but to see these local news outlets try to paint every single one of these arrests, oh, another thug, another gangster, another whatever, and trying to paint this image that every single undocumented immigrant in the country
is a horrible person. Right.
The sentiments that are fueling, because I do believe that Trump is going to try to deliver on this more than what we've seen. And I just want people to understand there are an estimate between 11 to 18 million undocumented immigrants in this country. Any serious effort to mass deport even half that number within 4 years will look nothing short of what we saw with Nazi Germany's attempt to relocate the Jewish populations into ghettos.
They just started sending. So I read two things in the last 24 hours. One, they are picking up immigrants and releasing them, right? So not deporting them, which is okay. I mean, how come more people aren't talking about that? What are they doing? Is there some sort of due process under what's happening there? And two, they're sending them to Guantanamo Bay in tent camps.
Yeah, I know.
So that's what I mean. It's like
they made a deal with El Salvador to send our people that are legally or not legally or whatever to El Salvador because he is a dictator and they love him. And Marco Rubio literally was over there making this agreement. I mean, it is sick. I am sick over this. Sending people there.
And you know, Biden put military troops on the border. Very little pushback from people about that, and Trump is beefing it up, and it's being reported as Trump is putting military on the border, and it's like they were already on the border. This is a problem. We don't want that, right? But like, you know, it's a mess. So it really is a matter of being able to absorb this information in a way that gives you some sort of focus and in a way that you can use it. And I can't say this enough. Electoral politics is one part of the solution going forward. It is, in my mind, less significant every cycle, right? Like I care less about it, but it is still something that requires a lot of attention and support. And you can't just say F it in terms of elections, but that's one part of it. And so, you know, people are talking about unions and labor organizing, and that is all going to start ramping up any day now, especially in the South, and leading toward, you know, general strikes and whatever. But everyone has, don't be spread thin, but everyone has to sort of choose, am I going to sit here and doom scroll today? Am I going to worry about the elections coming up? Or am I going to do something like, you know, join a fucking union or try and organize your own workplace? And
I don't understand why people that are, I think everybody should just not pay their taxes. Don't even bother doing them.
See,
why?
This is the fucked up part
it's only a thing. I mean, you don't go to jail for not paying your taxes 1 year. It could be a protest.
I think
you absolutely can go to jail for not paying your taxes in 1 year.
No, you can't.
Okay, look,
You get
I don't
fines, you get letters, you get
I
all
don't
this shit. I
I
know
don't
how
believe
this works.
there's been a lot of people over the years who have told me this or that about the IRS. Here's what I do know. They are destabilizing the IRS to the point where they won't go after people who can afford lawyers, which means they'll go after anyone who can afford lawyers. And that's me, right? And that's
Right,
like,
that's
I'm
all of us.
assuming a lot of us. And so the IRS is like, well, we got to do what we got to do. Let's go after the little guys. And I don't want any, I want to be as far off their fucking radar as
No, I
possible.
was just thinking,
Well, that was the
you know,
whole
if
debate.
we all do protests of, you know, people want to protest. I
No,
think
we should all join communes so that our income is so low that we don't pay taxes.
Well, I'm
Well,
with you,
that's,
Sandy.
I'm
though.
already there, Matt.
Sandy, I'm totally with you though. Like specifics aside, I do agree that we should be thinking in terms of a mass protest along those lines.
I
for
had
sure.
one. I
For
wrote
sure.
one up years ago when I was in payroll. I figured out how everybody could not pay their taxes all year long and claim single 10 and have nothing withheld for the government. And if that was done en masse, the government would say, oh, look, we're not getting any withholdings from anyone. And then you just pay your taxes at the end of the year and you put the money aside. It could have been a movement. It could have worked. I don't know what.
Yeah, I don't know.
Tried this with the student
Oh
loan.
no, it could have worked.
Well, they've tried a similar protest
Wasn't illegal then.
with the student loans
Yeah.
situation, because you know the student loan situation has gone completely out of control. I mean, it's you know, that's a minor issue that the country is facing, right? But it's a real issue, and people are struggling with it.
Minor by comparison, sure.
Because it's long term, or yeah, I don't know.
By comparison to the other horrible things you deal with as a U.S. citizen. Yeah,
we
yeah,
should
exactly.
talk. It's after midnight. It's 10 a.m. on the East Coast, just so everyone knows. But we should talk quickly about the protests that happened today, the 50 protests in 50 states, because there was a lot. This is interesting. And I think this is worth pointing out while we have, 110 people watching or whatever. There was a lot of chatter in the 48 hours leading up to these protests going, there's not a lot of information around it. We don't know who's putting these on. Their website isn't detailed. There's like a contact page. They're not going to get back to us all that quickly. What's going on? And then people started to make note that, being the organizer publicly is fucking dangerous. And you're putting yourself out there. And we've seen what happens to organizers of movements before. And it's not good, right? It could be anywhere from being arrested to, well, the cops went to his house and now he's dead. Well, what happened? Well, it was a real bad guy. So it makes sense that these protests are organized in a way that it's like, okay, every capital, noon, 1 o'clock, whatever it is, on the exact same day, close to the exact same time, as many people as possible, activate. And there's not going to be a lot of details around it. And people were like, it feels like a trap.
I was very
suspicious.
I have to say,
you're right, because we learned a lot during the college protests last year.
And BLM before that. Yeah.
Right. Well, not only will the government, but also institutions will target protesters, collaborating with the government. So the government's promising to make your criminal life difficult, and institutions are promising to make your financial life difficult or impossible.
Right.
But not to hire people and things of that situation. And so we saw a lot of students, go into stealth mode, incognito, so to speak, hiding their faces. And so I think you're exactly right that people, for better or for worse, don't want to publicly put themselves out there, because they know that there's going to be an entourage of different forces that are going to come after you and make you suffer for the truth that you're speaking the power.
It's risky enough to protest, much less be the leader. Yeah, right.
Never if you're trying to make an evil thing happen. If you're out there saying, like, I think the gays deserve to burn in hell, and I want everybody to be slaves, I want to enslave the whole world, me too. Then they're gonna pat you on the back. But
Patriot
if you're like,
Front,
hey,
why can't everyone just Yeah, why I guess the cops are like, why, or the authorities are like, why can't everyone just dress the same, carry the flag, march in unison, get out
And
of your
agree with
rental
me.
van, get back in your
Do as
rental
I say.
van? Yeah. I think though
Be my
that
serf.
there was a lot of like social media posting today and video of those protests going on. It was very good to see. I think that somebody in the chat said the shit's gonna hit the fan in a month or so, and I don't know if they were which way they were talking. Like we're either gonna get fed up and it's gonna hit the fan in terms of the administration's gonna be feeling it and elected officials are gonna feel it from us, or the other way around, or it's just gonna be like a shit tornado and we're all gonna be caught up in it. But one way or another, this thing's gonna come to a head and people will get fed up. So if you're protesting, you're so brave, and I really do. I thank everyone. You know how people say thank you for your service to the troops? I'd say that to anyone who's protesting right now. Thank you for your service is a big, huge deal. My 50-year-old knees are not really up to
Well,
it.
today
I'm trying to do it in other
Sandler's
ways.
on Nicole Sandler's show, she had people calling from different states that were at the protests.
Oh, I would love to do that.
And
Yeah,
so
that's
it was
cool.
really great. She had from Idaho and from California and from, I think it was a couple of red states. People went. They went. And there was no speakers. It was just associating with each other, protesting, chanting, singing, but there was no organized speakers, and it worked out really well. People were very happy with it, at least the ones I heard.
I'm gonna say two very quick points. The first being that I think Sandy's quite correct. I think drastic things need to be done before the next election to show the American people's dissatisfaction with American life. I think protests are a great way to do that. I think a more specific protest along the lines as what Sandy said of like not paying your taxes, going in with full knowledge that it could bite you.
Advocating for illegal activity.
So Sandy's advocating for illegal activity.
No,
I'm not sure that I signed up. He definitely says you should.
God damn it! You know what? I'm advocating for what I knew in payroll that you couldn't necessarily. It was all fines and things like that, not illegal activity.
Let's go around and everybody say, "Oh, go ahead, Jake."
I just think that the other major thing to depress you guys all a little bit, and I challenge you at home to do this. Go to your non-political friends. Go to people or acquaintances, whatever. People in your life who don't follow this stuff for fun, and ask them if they even heard about these protests. And if they did, ask them what they were about. And I bet you're going to get real depressed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to change, and maybe hopefully we'll find out I'm wrong about that. But I suspect what you're going to find out is nobody who doesn't follow this regularly even was aware that they were going on.
This step one, though.
Yeah. I think
February.
This is what we need to, like, us who get in front of a camera for a living need to address.
And that's why it all
shouldn't
happened
have to be deep in to know the basics.
But it all happened on the Discord for me personally, but we were really on it whether or not is this cool or not, right? And like I'm putting infographics out there on tips on how to protest, what to wear, go with a buddy, don't walk into a situation you can't walk out of, that kind of thing. And giving people tips and saying don't just go, sit in your car for a second, look around, then go, right? And let people know you're going to be there. But this is really, if this is how protests are going to be going forward, it's only February 2025. Let's feel it out and make sure it's legit, and then we will fucking get up to speed. And I think it's going to be one hell of a summer.
And listen, Roger Hallam, who was the founder of Extinction Rebellion, had a very successful nonviolent civil disobedient campaign for a long time until they put him in prison for this, for having a Zoom meeting, right? That's how bad it is in the UK. But he understands. I had him as a guest and I asked him to talk about nonviolent civil disobedient for progressive people in the United States, and it's on my channel because it was a good interview. So if anybody wants to learn from one of the best, that's Roger Hallam. Although he's in prison and everybody's fighting it. It's terrible.
I'm writing this down as a note.
Let's go around. Do you guys want to go around? Let's wrap this up. I got a 10 a.m. show. What do you guys got going on this week?
Let's do it clockwise.
I'll start. Jennifer Hines, my partner, is coming back for Friday night, and we are doing our as the Biosphere Dissolves show, but we are going to be highlighting spiritual people that make us feel better, and we're going to do an Arctic update. And what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic, folks. So it'll be a good show. That's what I'm doing.
I am painting pottery with my father, who is recovering, but in the hospital, but doing much better now. And I'm gonna, I'm hoping early next week, gonna start rolling out non-live videos. What's your addendum?
It's Looney Tunes Appreciation Friday night, because he's the moderator of so many shows. So yay, that's right. It's Looney Tunes Appreciation Night.
I got the surfs to call that out.
Yeah. Great.
I love Looney, man.
All right, I'm done.
What are you up to, Antonio?
Well, I'll be going down to South Carolina to Greenville to do my little martini bar cross.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta get in touch with me, because if I'm there at the same time, I will meet up with you. That'll be awesome.
I'll hit you up. It'll be on Saturday.
Nice. Awesome. And then so tomorrow I have Brittany Page coming on at 10 a.m. Eastern for Letterhack Daily. We're going to be talking about ways to stay calm while watching the news. And then Friday, if everything goes according to plan, I'm pre-taping an interview in the morning, which I will play live during the live show Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern with Christopher Golden and Tom Snigowski, who are both writing the latest comic book, Frankenstein Underground, The Lost Sea, from the Hellboy universe.
Yeah.
So this is a huge get. These guys are very well-established comic book writers, so that's going to be a big one. I should go off with that hitch, but you never make promises, so we'll see. But the next couple of days are going to be fun leading into the weekend. That's it.
While we were talking, by the way,
this is very so. Jake, this feels like something Jesus would do, like working with your hands.
Jesus could do wine.
Doing it with your father.
I got just clay pots.
Oh, that's cute, though. I love it. And
hope you're wearing sandals.
All right, so Jake, that's it. Just pot.
That's it. Yeah, and then next week to be some cool videos. Hopefully, that'd be awesome.
Well, just pots, pot, and.
And yeah, right. I'm just gonna say I want to see that guy back in a jacket and tie pronto.
I know.
I don't feel right. I don't. The world is off a little bit.
All right. Well, I'll say good night, and we'll say good night. Thank you, Antonio.
Cool. Thanks, Antonio. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. We've had two really pretty great guests 2 weeks in a row. It's been wonderful.
It was fun.
Yeah, we loved having you, and I learned a whole lot. Wow. All right.
It's fun.
All right, guys. Good night. Peace out to everybody.
Take care.
Love you all. Don't do anything illegal. Okay.
See you guys.
Okay.
So just real quick, lately I have been thinking a lot about, like, if there was a single solution for everything that's wrong with the world and how we're under pressure and living with the burden we feel every day to get it right, fix things, to do better. Wouldn't that single solution be great? So I think about this and I keep coming up with one word. I keep coming up with love. But that word has been distorted over time, and it's been slashed and it's been torn. And I think it's because to love is to take a chance, and we are too quick to procrastinate. But why? Insanity laughs under pressure. We're breaking. Why can't we give ourselves a chance? Why can't we give love a chance? maybe it's because love is this old-fashioned word, and love dares you to care for people, all people, but especially people living on the edge, and love dares us to change our way of caring about one another, but also about ourselves. And we forget about that part. This may be our last chance. And you know what? Let's say it is our last chance. This is our last chance. This is our last dance. This is ourselves. Okay, thank you. At least one person recognized that I was basically just quoting Queen and David Bowie. Thank you, the Prince of Inadequate Lighting. I am not that poetic. I thought it was going to be way more obvious.